Hello everyone. So obviously with the presidential election literally within the next few months in November, you won't find it coming now. We're already nearly mid-May already, would you believe? Like time's flying. But anyway, uh, obviously we're not going to even get into the electoral mess that's happening at the moment in terms of people on the register that are dead years and years ago, and then people who don't even exist. We're not even getting into that at the moment, but we will talk about it probably briefly. But the main thing, I suppose, is what Ain2 is proposing, and along with Sinn Féin's jumping on the bandwagon now, is saying that Irish citizens in Northern Ireland should vote for the presidency, like for the President of Ireland. Now, I suppose that would be hard to do. It never has been done, probably. It never has been done in the history of the state. So I don't foresee the government ever doing it because, again, it'd be too. I think the government talked about it a few years ago. I think this was about 20 years ago, and they said Sinn Féin would have too much of too much influence, I suppose, in that election. I suppose looking back, and they'd probably be right. Yeah, Sinn Féin would have won away with it. Most likely be Jerry Adams, mostly for the presidency. I couldn't foresee Sinn Féin put anybody else for it. But anyway, I won't be voting Sinn Féin anyway. I don't like Sinn Féin. I don't like really any of them. But yeah, I suppose we have to have this discussion. And I suppose that's the reason why I'm making should citizens, Irish citizens, take for example in the UK, London, or in Paris, take for example, or Amsterdam, wherever the Irish people may be, in Australia particularly, should they be able to vote for the presidency? And again, you have to remember the presidency is pretty much limited power. You don't have any power. The only power really here is in the Dáil and the Seanad. But you see in other countries, they're allowed to vote abroad in embassies. They have to go to embassies of different countries to vote. Take, for example, Finland's recent local elections, would you believe? People were able to vote here in Ireland, Finnish people who have Finnish passports, were able to vote here in Ireland for, like, literally local candidates in the local area where they come from in Finland. And the same for the presidential election, same for the general election in Finland. They can vote at the embassy in Dublin, take for example. Just for argue, just saying, Finland's other countries are different. Sometimes it's other elections, but we should probably look at that. But the only reason why the Irish government would ever look at it, let's be honest, especially in Australia and New Zealand, not many of them are going to be too fond of the Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, for making them leave the country. Not many of them are going to willingly put an X in the box, to vote for Betty or Heron or anything like that. And none of them are going to do that. No sane person would do that if you've been sent abroad by the Irish government, pretty much forced abroad, not sent abroad, but literally forced to leave. Not many of them are going to put an X in the box for Betty or Heron. That's what so I can see why the government won't do that. But I suppose it's important having a discussion, as I say, about Northern Ireland. As I say, it could be too favouritism to Sinn Féin winning the presidency. I suppose it might push them over the line. If, say, for example, Irish citizens in Northern Ireland could vote, it might push them over the line. And I suppose, how would you do it, I suppose, too? On that big of a scale, would they have to come to Southern Ireland to vote, or what would they have to do? Would there be a voting station down in Northern Ireland? Compared to other countries, say, for example, in Amsterdam, to go to the Irish embassy in the Netherlands to vote. I suppose there's loads of logistics behind it too. It's not just you turn up and vote. It's the logistics behind it, how you do it. But obviously, as I said at the beginning of this video too, you have to make sure that they're not dead people voting or people who just don't exist. In some cases now we're coming across people who just didn't exist in the first place and they ended up voting in the election for whatever reason. So people who just didn't exist for the last 100 years turned up and voted and then disappeared. It doesn't make any sense, but sure, that's the country we live in, unfortunately. It's the same for dead people who are dead 50 years. They're voting in the elections. And then there's other cases where people have emigrated for the last 30 years and they ended up voting in the election. It's beggars belief, if you ask me. But yeah, it's important to have this discussion. Should Irish citizens abroad get the vote? I suppose this is talked about every time there's an election in this country. But it's important to talk about it. It's really important because other countries are doing it. But then again, as you say, it could be influenced and there's other ways of doing it, I suppose, that could influence the vote, as I say, not just in Northern Ireland, but take, for example, interference with the election. The boxes could be switched. Things could happen in terms of transporting. Because obviously, if say, for example, there was Irish people voting in Sydney, say, for example, in the Irish Embassy in Sydney or in Canberra in Australia, they would have to go on a plane to vote in boxes all the way back to Ireland. I presume they would have to come back. I don't know, would they count them there, but most likely they would have to send them home to get them counted in the Republic of Ireland, like the hardly that they would count them in Australia. But say for argument's sake they did, and the boxes were switched or something happened, or the boxes mysteriously disappeared. Things like that can happen. I suppose that's another thing of the way to look at it too, because you couldn't really like obviously there's some questions about some of the stuff that's happened here, let alone in other countries. But you get what I'm saying. So there's loads of questions behind this. I suppose there has to be a huge discussion about this. But I don't know, personally, I know what people have asked me personally, what do I think about Irish citizens in Northern Ireland voting? As I say, I think Sinn Féin would have too much of an advantage, to be totally honest. Because a lot of people are delusional with Sinn Féin, thinking that they're the nationalist party, they care about Ireland, where Sinn Féin doesn't. To be totally honest, not to blow up your own boat, but they don't really care about Ireland, to be totally honest. Sinn Féin, modern Sinn Féin. Years ago they might have cared, not so much nowadays. That's just my opinion. If you disagree, that you disagree. But if you look at Sinn Féin's actions over the last few years, and not to mention Finucane, Fianna Fáil, they're not much tradition either. The whole basically one and the same. But yeah, let me know what you think. Do you think Irish citizens should have the right to vote from abroad or vote in Northern Ireland? Like, obviously, if you have an Irish passport and stuff, and Irish citizenship, not just talk about everybody can vote. But yeah, I suppose it's an interesting discussion. I suppose it has to be had. But I don't know. To put it straight to you. First of all, I don't know. After seeing what we've seen the last day or two, with the amount of people who are on the register who are dead and who don't exist and have voted, but after that, I don't know. To be totally honest, I don't think we should do anything at the moment until we figure out what's the situation here. Why are the dead people voting in the election? Until we figure that out, then we might consider, maybe we should let Irish people vote from abroad and stuff like that. But again, the government will never do it, even if the Irish people voted overwhelmingly to do it. The government would say no, because why would the Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Sinn Féin too? Why would they willingly say let's let you blow ourselves up? Because let's be fair, no Irish person in Australia who's forced to leave by the government will vote Fianna Fáil or Sinn Féin or the mainstream political party. Why would they? Because they've been forced to stay over there and they want to come home. But there's nothing here for them. It's simple as that, and that's the thing too. Anyway, let me know what you think. Subscribe for more, and bye.